Alright, today I'm taking a look at the Google Nest Thermostat. There it is. Nice and simple. Everything is well organized. Just 2 screws, and we got the base plate and the unit itself. And it even has batteries inside. That is very nice looking. And on the mounting base, they even thought to put a little bubble level on it. So yeah, they thought of everything. That's pretty cool. And these are easy, just little push connectors, so you don't need a screwdriver or anything. So you just pull this down, drop the wire in, and let it go. So it couldn't be easier. That's pretty cool. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that there's no power to this thing. So I'm going to take this one off, and this isn't going to be the one I'm going to be working on, but this is just close to the breaker, so I can use it as a good example. This is Honeywell. It just pulls right off, and different thermostats do that in different ways. I've got a multimeter, and I'm setting it to AC. I don't want DC because this is using AC current, and I can just stick this on any terminal, and I want to check red. All right, so red has 28 volts. And if your wires aren't labeled correctly, like maybe somebody painted over them, which can happen, you can literally just check any wire against red, and it will tell you the difference. Right, anything else, it'll just show 0 volts, or pretty close to 0 volts. So that's how you can tell which one is which. And if yours are painted over, then all you would do is you would take this. I've got a little sticker for red, and I could just wrap that around that wire, stick it to itself. That way I know exactly which one is which. All right, so now I'm going to shut off my furnace, and that's going to shut off power to the thermostats. And if you don't know which one is your furnace, maybe it's not labeled correctly, just look for the service disconnect. Mine's right here. If I shut that off, that'll shut off power to the whole house. Yours might be on the top. And another option is if you go up right next to your furnace itself, like that big block with the air handler and all that on it, there's usually a switch or a plug. So you just switch it off or pull the plug, and that does the same thing that we just did right here. And with the breaker off, let's come back and check it just to make sure. Yep, we're at 0 volts. It's a good idea just to check across all the terminals just to make sure. Well, we are dead, so that's good. And the display still is on, but that's okay. That's because it's got batteries. So here's the one we are going to be working on, so you get a little bit of variety. So we got 2 covers, one on the top, one on the bottom, and the terminals are on top. So 0, 0, 0, 0. So we're good. And this is using tiny little Phillips, so I'm just going to unspin those, and then the wires should pull out. All right, so all the wires did properly disconnect, so let's go ahead and take the box off. And when you're doing this, you want to try to not put too much pressure forward, because oftentimes this will be attached to the wall just with one of those drywall anchors. So if you try to push too hard, you could actually push the screw right through. And that's okay if that happens, it's just you want to try to avoid it. We just want to be a little careful with the wires. We don't want to damage them pulling it out. There we go. So this is why most people get the trim plate. You can see how it's been painted. It looks like a couple of times. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to patch a couple of these holes, paint it, and then put my thermostat on. However, what you could do is you could just get a trim plate, which is a thing you can buy separately, and it will just cover this whole hole, and then you put the thermostat on top. And that's usually the best way to go because it's a lot easier. Sometimes I can just push these anchors into the wall, but it looks like this one's being stubborn. So what I'm going to use is DryDex. This is something that I use all the time. It's usually pink. I've had this thing for actually quite a while because I make it last. And so you can see it's not quite as pink anymore, more white, so it's about almost done. All I do is I just kind of take it, mash it into the hole, and you can see the hole disappears, right? And there are other, better ways to do this than what I'm doing, but I've been doing this for a very long time, and it just works. So don't change it. Probably could have done a better job there, but I'm not really too worried about it. So I'm going to give that about an hour, and then I'll come back and paint it. And before I paint it, I'm just going to kind of sand down any kind of rough edge on here. And this is 120 grit. All right. And then if you want to match your paint, what you would do is you would just take a razor and you would cut out a 1-inch square, something about that size, and then you could just peel the paper right off the wall. You wouldn't want to do it right here where it's going to be easily seen. You would want to do it by the floor or up toward the ceiling where it's not going to be as easily seen, most of the time down by the floor. And then you just peel that up, take it to a big box store, and you can match the paint. So when that dries, I usually change color and we'll see exactly what we get. Okay, so it's been an hour and that's no longer tacky, so that's good. And the main reason that you want to wait for this to dry, because the temptation is always just to put the thing on, screw it on, and be done. But if you do that and then later on you have to pull it off, it will be glued to that paint. So best to let this dry first. I'm going to pre-drill it just because this hole is large enough that if I just try to screw it directly in, it might break some of this material out. So I'm just going to drill it just to be safe. All right, now I didn't drill that one all the way. And the reason is because this wire is right here. It's right behind it. So I want to make sure that this is out of the way before I actually drill. There we go. And that's a 5/64 spit. I'm only attaching the drywall here, so I don't want to like torque it down. I just want to get it right up next to it. Okay. So this part's pretty easy. You can see we got green, red, OB, Y, C, and W. So we'll start with green. There we go. There we go. You can see these are pulled back a little bit, so you can tell that they're actually in. Got yellow. Now you see how this is sticking out quite a bit? I'm going to trim that back just a bit. Okay, so that's better. There is still a little bit sticking out, but it's not as bad as it was. And cyan. All right, do the same thing there. There we go. And last one, white. There we go. Okay. We'll bend these down. And now we're going to actually put on the head. So this has a little tag right here, and that is preventing the battery from making a connection. So I'll just pull that out, and then we'll push this on. So these pins are going to make contact in these holes right here. Looks like it's already powering up. And before we deal with that, I'm going to turn the furnace back on. All right, so now we're going to get the Google Home app. So I'm going to the Play Store, Google Home, install. Now open. All right. Location access, yeah, of course. Okay, so I found my stereo, but that's not what I want. So we're going to find thermostat, Nest thermostat. And the QR code is on the back. Okay, continue. I agree. Okay. Yeah, that's funny. It's actually telling me how to install the thermostat. So I could have just used this. That's actually nice that they got it on here, though. Okay, we are connected. Okay, so it's asking what my furnace is using. So is it electric furnace? I'm using a gas furnace. It's a forced air. All right, so should I be heating or cooling today? It's a cold out, so I'm gonna be heating. Cool. So now we're setting up the Wi-Fi. Checking for updates, and we'll let it finish up. Then we can put in personal information. This just can make it easier for this thing to actually tell like what the temperature is in my area, that kind of thing. All right, so now it's asking where it's at. Living room. And here we can set schedules. So if we, obviously if we're both at work, we don't need to be heating or cooling. So we can set all that. Okay, cool. So this is where we're going to be setting the temperature. We want it to be above 69 degrees when we're home. We can call that 70 and below 73. Yeah, okay, we'll go 69 to 73. And then when we're not at home, we'll call it 60 to 77. And this is where we actually set the schedule. So I've got it set for comfort at 6 a.m., goes to eco at 8:30, and then back to comfort at 4:30. So this is assuming I leave for work at 8:30, get back at 4:30. So if I want to change that, I can just make this 2:30, done. We got set up home and away routines. I think I'll skip that for now. Okay, cool. So this is actually going to be a thing where it monitors the HVAC system, which is actually kind of good because it can actually tell you if you got problems. Okay, so I finished rebooting and now it's just running. Let's change this to 70. Cool, just like that. Nice and responsive. Nice. Beautiful. Very cool. So that was actually pretty simple. I mean, if you don't want to do all the painting and stuff, then just get the trim plate and that'll take care of all that. But yeah, it was just pluck the old one out, put the new one in. That's a pretty nice thermostat.